Hey guys, this is Ryan Johnson. This is my week 7B discussion post. So this is chapter 13, and I decided to answer question number 6. Question 6 is briefly discuss the nature of state building and how it has evolved. Using the 3 questions posed in the text, discuss the nature and dictates of state building. So this was a huge question, and I like to record long videos, so I'm going to make it a point to try to keep this one short. But I just want to bring out some of the points that we had in the book. So there are really 2 reasons, as far as the nature side of it, there are really 2 reasons that one state would intervene in another state, and that would be either for some kind of civil internal disagreement. So if there's a civil war going on, and there's no way for that state to solve the problems itself, or if there's no way to fix it, then it's going to have to it's going to bring in intervention from another state. So that's one reason. The second reason is that one state would intervene in another state because there are interests at stake. And so, an example of that would be the United States involved in Iraq. An example for that first one of civil discord or civil disagreement would be maybe like Kosovo. So those are the 2 reasons for intervention, and that would be kind of the initial building block for state building, would be that initial intervention. So we found out the hard way in Somalia that conflict suppression does not actually drain the swamp, does not solve some of those deeper problems. So we can suppress the conflict, but we kind of realized in Somalia that it can't stop there, it has to keep going, and that there needs to be some sort of swamp draining, as Snow keeps saying. So moving on to my next post-it note. So the kind of the ability for another state to intervene and build up a failing state, the ability to do that is kind of unknown. As far as the history goes, Somalia was kind of this first attempt, and again, we really didn't build the state. There was no building afterwards, and we pulled out before Somalia could develop, or before we attempted to develop Somalia, and so the state is still kind of in anarchy right now. And that was in the 1990s, and then in the end of the 1990s, you have Kosovo, and that was an attempt by, I believe it was NATO. I think it's actually UN, the United Nations, with the United States leading, attempted to get involved in Kosovo, and that only worked so well as well. So then you have some things dating kind of pre-1990s, post World War II, Germany and Japan, really not state building. The basic infrastructure was there. It wasn't difficult to raise the capital needed to kind of rebuild everything. So Snow argues that those aren't examples of state building. Maybe the closest success story we have is the Republic of Korea after the Korean War, and that the outcome there was good, but the resources were really sufficient. There was a lot of money that was put towards it, and so Snow suggests that maybe that's the reason that there was kind of a positive result. And then he mentions 2 presidents, Clinton and Bush. Clinton being the president during the whole Kosovo intervention, and then Bush during the Afghanistan-Iraq wars. And so those were just kind of maybe like, since the last 30 years, the president's involved in these different types of interventions. So 3 questions posed in the reading. The first question was where to go. The second question was what to do, and the third was how to do it. So the first question, where to go, it's basically a matter of choice. You have 2 distinct reasons. You have this kind of humanitarian reason, and you have a reason because it supports some kind of, it's like a secondary objective, and that would be similar to what's happening in Iraq, and that in Afghanistan, where we want to get rid of terrorism, we want to root out the Taliban, we want to kind of drain the swamp, because that would benefit terrorism. It would benefit the world in eradicating terrorism. So kind of a secondary objective is actually building the state of Afghanistan. So those are 2 different reasons. Now, Snow takes the opportunity while answering this question to go over some of the difficulties, and he mentions a couple economic difficulties These states generally don't have, a failing state generally doesn't have any kind of infrastructure or institutions, no education, no healthcare, no electricity, so the basic infrastructure is lacking. I'm not sure why he throws this question of where to go. I think it maybe impacts the ability to succeed, but yeah, it was in there nonetheless. So the second question, what to do? Two big problems to I'm sorry, there are two big problems when you look at what we should do. And the first one is basically we don't really know what needs to be accomplished. We really don't have this complete list of all these things that have to be done. The situation is probably it's a failing state, so the situation is not good. There's no group, there's no politicians, there's no leader that's really able to say, hey, here's what's wrong, this is what you need to fix. So we have to go in and do those assessments ourselves. The second problem to kind of setting a goal is there's a lack of outsider knowledge, and we really saw this with our intervention in the Middle East. We really weren't, parts of our government weren't in tune with customs or with all the strife or with some of the issues, some of the cultural, ethnic, racial, religious issues at play. And so as outsiders, an intervening state doesn't really have all the knowledge it needs. So there are, as far as what to do, there are 4 different actions. There's political, economic, social, and psychological. All 4 of these are pretty self-explanatory. Political, basically there's no legitimacy, so there needs to be a legitimate leadership, there needs to be order and security. Economic action, you need to rebuild infrastructure, raise capital, rehabilitate. And then the social aspect, people are angry at each other, there's going to be civil strife, and people need to kind of need to forgive, they need to overcome some of the animosity. And then the psychological aspect, a lot of people need psychological help, children especially, children and soldiers. So those are some areas of kind of action. And then the last question was how to do it. There really is no guidebook here, but there are 2 actors that would be the kind of the boats or the vessels of how we would accomplish these goals, and that would be either a state military, or then the other actor would be United Nations or NATO or some kind of regional alliance. And again, as far as these different actors, their primary concerns would be first establishing security, protecting civilians, and then also protecting themselves. And so, especially this last question, Snow is a little vague about how to do it. He kind of dances around and instead suggests that there are a lot of hurdles, and there are, but he avoids giving us really concrete examples on how to do it. And I would assume that's because the world's a diverse place, and every state's going to bring up its own problems, and it's going to require a new assessment. So that being said, I thought the last question was still a little vague, and if anyone else has any suggestions and they think Snow left anything out here, I'd love to hear it. But that last question was how to do it. So there you go, little bit of the nature behind state building and how it evolved, and those 3 questions, or 3 questions. So there you go. That was my post.